welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter and I live in beautiful Victoria, British Columbia on a old wooden motor cruiser along with my dog Geordie. All the while we're restoring it, which has turned into quite a project, but I'm loving every minute of it. Anyway, if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, I'd love you to stick around and subscribe. I also wanted to mention, because a few people have asked about this truck. My truck is a 1959 Land Rover, which I completely rebuilt from a bunch of scrap parts to be my work truck when I used to be a builder. And that rebuild is pretty well documented on another YouTube channel, Riverport Rovers, which was my old YouTube channel. I've left a link for it down in the description. In fact, I've left a link for a few other sort of Land Rover foolishness videos down there as well. Anyway, it might be interesting for you if you're interested in old Land Rovers or old trucks in general. I also started an Instagram account, which might be helpful for people who aren't quite sure what I'm up to. As you may know, the footage is mostly about 3 or 4 months behind, and as a result, I wanted to find a way to be able to keep people up to date with what I'm actually doing now. So that's why I've started this Instagram account, and there's a link for that also in the description below. I apologize, it may not be Insta etiquette, but I preloaded it with images from the beginning of my travels some many years back. Bagpiper. Anyway, I also, as you know, give away a Travels with Geordie T-Shirt with every episode. So if you like one of those, just leave a comment down below. I have to apologize. This episode is a little bit out of sequence because my GoPro has forgotten how to tell time, and as a result, it scatters video files all over my hard drive, making them really hard to find. Anyway, as a teaser, in this episode, we finally get the engine started in one of the boats, which is really exciting. Anyway, let's get to it, shall we? Well, hello and welcome back to MV Zephyrus. We're back in the wheelhouse and you can see it's empty. That is a clue that we're going to get going on the motor again. Just 10 minutes ago, this wheelhouse was a beautiful home and everything's packed away all over the place. But now we have enough room to get back down under here, and the goal this weekend is to get the engine running. All right, cheers. Okay, so we've gotten started here. We're in the bilge. Tidying up the bilge to begin with, starting to get some of the ancillaries put on, the exhaust there, the header tank, oil cooler, muffler, intake manifold back there. Fair bit to put back together. Have to cobble up an alternator and find a belt for it relatively quick. Having some trouble with the raw water cooled exhaust manifold in that this inlet here at this end is really rusty. I knew that was like that. These things aren't available from Perkins anymore as a Perkins part. However, you can get an aftermarket stainless steel custom fabricated one, which would be incredibly dear. But anyway, in the meantime, I'm going to clean this one up enough to get it on, get the engine started, learn more about what else the motor may need. The point is to get it running and then really determine what kind of condition it's in and how we can move on from there. So I'm just cleaning up some of the threads on some of these studs here, and we'll get this on. I have all new gaskets for it, which is awesome. Now, I don't know if you can see from where you are, but the corners of the manifold here is chipped off, right where the studs went in, and there's no studs in there now. I don't know how deep these are, but I'm going to run a tap in and see if I can clean it up enough that I'm confident. There's still good surface here and here, so that I know that the gasket will hold. Having now played with both the Perkins 6 354 and the 4 236, the 4 is just so much lighter. Everything about it is just smaller, even though it has the same, let's try not to slice my finger here, the same basic cylinder geometry. Everything about it is just smaller. Like this intake manifold is a fraction of the size and weight of the one for the 6. Likewise the exhaust, likewise just everything else about it. Now, of course, there's something to be said for a stoutly built engine, and this isn't a lightweight engine, there's no doubt about it, but it is just amazingly simpler and tidier. Gotta be careful here, because this is aluminum and I don't want to put nick in it. I'd rather not put a nick in my pocket, my finger either. You've seen plenty of this.
Okay, so the manifold's on. Now we get to have some fun. New gasket for the exhaust. Normally there'd be what's called a wet elbow here, which is a water mixer. Basically the hot dry exhaust comes out of here, and the seawater, which comes through the heat exchanger, comes out of here, and they mix here. And that's why out the back of a boat you always see water bubbling along with the exhaust. Very prone to corrosion. The one that came with this engine was completely finished. So we have a new one. A combination of, bits. A combination of bits that are going to make it up. So this is the first bit, which basically is an adapter for the exhaust manifold to pipe. And this is a generic wet elbow, 3-inch wet elbow, that will bolt onto that flange and has the injection port up here to connect to this. So, and from here it goes to rubber hose, which is easy as pie, to a new muffler and all kinds of stuff. So we'll get going with that, but let's just get this on. Okay, so I'm starting to mock up the exhaust. So I think I mentioned I have this flange to the original exhaust manifold. I had bought a 2.5-inch elbow and other nipple just in case I wanted to redirect this wet elbow a little bit, and I do. Part of the reason is when it was up here, the way the injection works on it, I was worried that it might put raw water back into the exhaust and dribble down into the engine, which is a common concern with raw water systems. So I'm pleased with the way this is now. I have to keep it to the point where it's still relatively, well anyway, I can't get that angle. It's going to be about like that. And then from here it's 3-inch hose down here to the new muffler. And this has worked out really well. There's a new water lift muffler. Picked up 3-inch elbow, a 3-inch to 3.5-inch adapter, or 4 actually, sorry, and into the existing side exit exhaust. Zephyrus has a side exit exhaust, which is, well, it's convenient in this sense because it's pretty easy to connect to. Whether it's ideal in the long run or not, I don't know, we may play with that. But in the meantime, it worked out really great. All I need to do now is create a little base for this, and I have a nice piece of marine ply I'm going to do that with. So really, other than aligning this up, deciding just how that's going to make that curve, the 3-inch exhaust can easily make that bend, and we'll be pretty close on the exhaust side. The intake manifold's ready to go on. The only reason it's not on is so that I have some knee room while I'm working down here. After that, raw water hose, which I have here. You can see also there's a sea strainer, which we'll be reusing. I'm going to realign it a little bit. Other than that, it's going really well. I think probably we'll turn the key on this, or touch the wire anyway, in, well, sometime mid-afternoon. Anyway, let me get to work. Cheers! Okay, so I bought 10 feet of premium 3-inch flexible exhaust hose. We only need a couple of feet for Zephyrus, but I have a feeling I'll need more than a few feet for my boat, so no harm having it. I would say this is going to be a beast to work with, but when you consider how much easier it makes the exhaust installation, I have no complaints at all. So maybe I showed you, I just measured off roughly 21. I'm going to give myself 22 inches to play with. This will have a couple of wires in it after I cut through the rubber. It's going to be a bit of a job to cut. Now, the trick to cutting this stuff is cutting straight across, because it's helix wound with wire. It's awfully tempting to follow the wire around. The trick here, of course, is to not slice yourself to ribbons. Great. Okay, now to get this stuff to go onto fittings easily, I use a little lubricant, lanolin. In Canada we have a product called fluid film. Now I just have to be able to find it. Okay, as usual, I do not want to be endorsing products, but this stuff, fluid film, if it's available where you are, it's amazing for a lot of things. It is a lanolin, and there's no petrochemicals in here at all, so it's super convenient for test fitting things like this. I don't know if you can see that just glide onto there. It wouldn't have been the way it went if it wasn't. Okay, so a little more lanolin in here. There. Now this is going to be, because nothing's actually bolted down yet, I'm trying to do this kind of as a mock-up. So I'm going to slide it around in various ways to get it to engage. There we go. There we go. There we go. That feels pretty good. Excellent. Okay. So, okay. I'm pleased it all sort of comes together. It works. Tweak here, tweak there. Bolt down the muffler first and then install all the clamps. I have high temperature thread sealant for all the pipe stuff here. I do not have a massive pipe wrench. What I have is one of those vice grip chain wrenches. So I'm hoping, because it's all new parts, that I can tighten that on well enough. I do want to talk about one more thing about the elbow though. This is a big subject, and those of you who are boaties might be screaming at me already. So you don't have a high enough loop on your exhaust, and well, that may be true. Ideally, you want to have a big loop here and the wet exhaust coming down on the other side, where this is substantially above water level. Water level on this boat is only about a foot below this elbow. Now, that's not really ideal. On a sailboat, that would be particularly dangerous, because as you heel, the side of the boat could come down actually below water level. In a perfect world, we would have come up these last 2 inches that we have room underneath the sole here before we went down again. I'm setting it up like this for now. This boat is going to get a transom exhaust sometime in the not too distant future. It may not be ideal, but it's really not that bad. One of the major improvements I made here was I slightly increased the angle of this wet elbow. I think if it came straight out, the injection port here could have possibly allowed water to get back in to the head, which would be no good at all. So by tipping this down just a little bit more, I'm feeling better about that. On the whole, I think it's actually a pretty cool installation. But I realize that some people will think this doesn't have a high enough loop, and I apologize about that. It's just the way it's going to be. Here we go. So this is all screwed down now, and we can reinstall the muffler for the last time. I got the clamps on it. Now, on here, I'm going to put high temperature thread sealant. If you're not familiar with these things, they're awesome. They're basically a vice grip product. These ones are Milwaukee. I don't know if vice grip actually make them. And basically, they turn vice grips into an evil chain enabled, hang on a second here, clamping device. But you can really grab large objects remarkably well with them, like that. And this is what I'm going to use in lieu of a big pipe wrench to put all these fittings together. So first step, I believe, with this pipe sealant is we'll wash them all with some acetone to make sure that we don't have any foreign materials on here that would reduce the bonding. See, that was pretty dirty. Permatex high temperature thread sealant. I've never actually used this product before. I hope it's reasonably suitable for what I'm doing. Let me just point you in the direction of the work I'm doing. I don't know if you saw any of that. Anyway, like 28 bucks for this little tube. So I hope it's really awesome stuff. Need the tube. Alright, and only on the male piece, and only 3/4 of the way on. Alright, let's get started. Woohoo! I need about 7/8 of a oh, I think I might get it. This does make a pretty good pipe wrench. Oh, come on. Don't mess me now. Okay, that looks good. I'm in the ballpark. I'm not going to fight with that too much more right now, because I don't know how quick this stuff dries up. Okay. Oof. And close. Okay. Now, a piece of pipe, 2 clamps. Where do I want these clamps to go? Backwards. There we go. The fitting, I'm actually quite pleased with this. Okay. Okay, so here's where we are. I have put enough oil in that it shows on the dipstick, although some will get used up in all the coolers and stuff like that, so I'll have to check it immediately if it bumps. I have a temporary fuel return line going into a tank. I have my new fuel supply attached to the lift pump, and I'm sitting here and I'm priming it. I don't know if you can hear that, but it is now relatively primed. I'm going to prime it some more. I have attached the battery cables. I have the exhaust on. I have a little temporary plug in the inlet for the raw water so that if it fires, smoke won't come pouring out of here. I have pinched off the pressure sending line from the transmission because I don't have a gauge on it. We're going to have to put a new line, a new gauge, so when the oil pump starts on the transmission it won't squirt oil everywhere. I have done the same for the oil sender for the engine. I have the fan belt on. I have the alternator tightened up. I have no raw water system at all, and I have no cooling water in the engine at all yet. What I'm going to do is put some, just keep priming it and making sure I have fuel coming back through the return line, which I can see going into the jug. And when I'm happy with that, I'm going to put some engine coolant water in, and then I think we're going to try and start it. Some of you at home are going, "You forgot that!" Anyway, so let me carry on with what I'm up to, priming this, and we'll get some coolant water in here. Yeah. Now I suspect some leaks from these bolts. These need washers with gaskets under the washers, and I haven't put anything in there yet. I neglected to order them. I figured I could make something homebrew. I got water pouring out somewhere. Oh, it's the drain. See, that was the block drain petcock. All right, let's keep putting water in. Of course, like with the oil, I'll fill this. It'll run for 30 seconds and it'll need some more. Good for getting started. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there. Okay, I'm going to prime the fuel some more. It'll take quite a bit of cranking to get this going. I have water coming out the raw water inlet to the heat exchanger. And that tells me the tubes in the heat exchanger are shot. And we have water crossing from the raw water side of the heat exchanger to the freshwater side of the heat exchanger. So that right there is the end of this project for a while. Okay, well, as discouraging as that is, anyway, I'm going to deal with that later. I'm going to try and start it. Obviously I can't run it very long because I have a leak in my freshwater cooling system. So I primed a little bit. Let's crank it a little bit and see what happens. First crank! I don't believe that! Okay. Aside from the little disappointment I shared with you earlier about this raw water problem, the likelihood that after having gone through everything that this engine's gone through, taken apart, put back together, upside down, right side up, fuel dry, that it started at the beginning of the very first crank, and I just looked out at the exhaust and there's almost no smoke. That's freaking cool. Damn you, heat exchanger. Well, there's another heat exchanger on my engine. Maybe it's good. Time to swap them. It started first crank, people! Oh yeah.